The courtroom in Brighton Falls smells like old paper and polished wood. The benches are full, not because the case is important in a legal sense, but because it is public. In a town like this, reputation is a shared sport. My father stands first. He adjusts his cuffs, clears his throat, and steps forward with the quiet confidence of a man who has always believed the room will follow him. "Your Honor," he says, voice even, "this is a simple matter. My daughter has made choices that reflect poorly on this family, on our name, on the stability of the Carter property." The word stability hangs in the air like something fragile. I sit at the opposite table, hands folded over one another, spine straight. I do not look at the gallery. I do not look at him. "She has been absent for years," he continues, "involved in operations that brought federal investigators into our town, neighbors asking questions, officials reviewing records. That is not the kind of attention a family farm needs." A few heads nod behind him. Brighton Falls does not like attention unless it comes in the form of church donations or newspaper praise. "My request," he says carefully, "is that control of the Carter land and residence be transferred fully to me, permanently, until such time as my daughter demonstrates sound judgment." Sound judgment. The judge watches him without expression. I keep my breathing slow. For 12 years, I have paid the property taxes on that land, every quarter, every year. When the irrigation system failed and the bank threatened lien action, I transferred the amount required before the notice reached the county board. When equipment loans defaulted after the highway contract collapsed, I covered the difference. Not once, not dramatically, just enough to prevent consequence. My service income at first. Later, compensation funds issued quietly after Operation Iron Vortex concluded and the Internal Review Board finalized its findings. I never informed him. Responsibility does not require announcement. Across the aisle, my father's lawyer opens a binder. Tabs, color-coded, prepared. He speaks about reputation damage, about instability, about classified investigations that raise concerns about psychological strain. He does not use the word unstable. He implies it. I do not move. There was a time when movement mattered, when every signal, every anomaly on a darkened screen could shift outcomes hundreds of miles away. They called me Basement Evie. The nickname was not cruel, it was dismissive. I worked below the hangar, beneath the roar of engines and the easy confidence of pilots, a windowless server room layered in cables and quiet heat. I analyzed feeds, procurement flows, encrypted communications. No one noticed who stayed late. That suited me. The night iron vortex began to fracture. The radio cracked through overhead speakers. Prime, this is Phoenix 1. Static followed. Then silence too precise to be accidental. I remember staring at 3 separate data streams that did not align. Supply transfers authorized outside of protocol. Fuel allocations inconsistent with flight logs. A private frequency accessed during a blackout window. I did not accuse anyone. I compiled timestamps, routing histories, personal authorizations signed digitally under Colonel Rhett Rivers' credentials. When I finished, I printed the file. Paper is heavier than data. I slid it across a steel table in a temporary command room. No explanation, no emotion, just alignment. Within hours, Marcus Hale was removed from the net. Access revoked, investigation initiated. The hangar felt different the next morning, quieter. I heard someone murmur, not knowing I was behind them. So who's really in command? I returned to the basement. In Brighton Falls, all they heard was that my unit was under review, that corruption had been exposed, that names had circulated at levels my father reads about in newspapers but does not understand. He heard embarrassment. He heard scrutiny. He did not ask questions. Now, in the courtroom, he avoids my eyes. "She left," he says, voice tightening slightly. "She abandoned the day-to-day responsibilities of this property. I remained. I maintained it." The judge looks down at the documents my attorney has just provided, a thin folder, plain. She opens it. The only sound is paper shifting. "These are county tax records?" she asks. "Yes, Your Honor." She reads. The room is very still. "Mr. Carter," she says after a moment, "it appears that over the past 12 years, all property taxes on the Carter land have been paid by Miss Emily Carter." A faint ripple passes through the benches. My father frowns. "That can't be accurate," he says. The judge turns another page. There are also records of 3 separate lien releases, paid in full by Miss Carter, and 2 equipment debt settlements. Silence expands. I keep my gaze on the edge of the table. I remember wiring those payments from overseas, waiting for confirmation codes while sitting beneath concrete ceilings, listening to generators hum. No one thanked me. That was never the point. The judge closes the first set of documents and reaches for another. "This," she says slowly, "is correspondence from the Department of Defense." My father straightens. His lawyer shifts. The judge reads silently for longer than is comfortable. Then she looks at me. "Ms. Carter's service record indicates commendation for analytical oversight during Operation Iron Vortex, specifically in identifying procurement fraud and unauthorized command activity. The report notes that her findings prevented substantial material loss and potential structural failure within her division." The courtroom air changes. It is not loud. It is recognition settling where assumption used to be. My father's face loses color, then regains it in a controlled way. "That is classified material," he says quickly. "Not the commendation summary," the judge replies. "It is public record." I do not speak. Years ago, when I handed over that file, I did not defend myself in the debriefing room. I let documentation do what emotion never could. The judge folds her hands. "Mr. Carter, the petition before this court asserts instability and irresponsibility. The documentation presented suggests the opposite." Behind me, someone shifts in their seat. Brighton Falls does not like recalibration. My father finally looks at me directly. There is confusion there. Not anger. Not yet. Confusion. He believed my silence meant absence. He believed my distance meant incompetence. He believed control only counted when it was visible. The judge calls for a brief recess. People rise slowly, whispering in contained voices. I remain seated for a moment longer. Across the aisle, my father stays where he is. For the first time in years, we are in the same room with facts between us. He studies me as if trying to reconcile 2 versions of the same person, the daughter who left and the one who never stopped paying. I meet his eyes for 3 seconds, no longer. Then I look down again. There is more to come. When the recess ends, the courtroom fills again more slowly. People do not look at me now. They look at my father. He stands before the bench with the same posture as before, but something in it has shifted. Less certainty, more calculation. The judge resumes her seat. "Mr. Carter," she says calmly, "before we proceed, I have additional questions." My father nods once. "You stated that your daughter has not participated in maintaining the Carter property. You also suggested that her professional conduct has caused reputational damage to this family. Are you aware that without her documented financial contributions, foreclosure proceedings would have begun in 2018? He hesitates. His lawyer leans in, whispers something short. "No," my father says finally. "I was not aware of that." The words cost him. The judge does not react. "And are you aware," she continues, "that the procurement investigation referenced in her service file resulted in federal recovery of misallocated funds and prevented criminal indictment of multiple mid-level officers?" He blinks. "That was not my understanding." "What was your understanding?" He clears his throat. "That there was controversy." The word falls flat. I remain still. I remember the internal review room after Iron Vortex concluded. The long table, the sterile lighting, men in uniform studying pages I had assembled. No one raised their voice. No one thanked me. One officer said only, "This will prevent a cascade." That was enough. In the courtroom, the judge folds her hands. "This court is not concerned with gossip, Mr. Carter. It is concerned with documented fact." A pause. "Your petition requests full transfer of authority over jointly inherited property on the basis of alleged instability. Yet the evidence presented suggests that Ms. Carter has exercised consistent financial oversight and has been formally recognized for professional integrity under pressure." My father's jaw tightens. "This isn't about money alone," he says. "It's about control, about leadership. She's never been present." I look at him then. Present. For 12 years, I have been present in the only way that matters to a system. Payment received, lien released, account current. Presence is not noise. The judge studies him carefully. "Control," she repeats. "You are concerned about losing control?" He does not answer immediately. The silence lengthens. In that silence, something shifts in him. Not publicly, not dramatically, but visibly enough. He realizes, perhaps for the first time, that this room does not respond to volume. It responds to record. My attorney stands. "Your Honor, with permission, we would like to submit one final document." The judge nods. A second folder is placed before her. This one is thinner. Inside are copies of wire transfers from my service accounts to the Carter Property Trust, a summary sheet showing cumulative totals, a letter from the county treasurer confirming that all delinquent tax notices over the past decade were resolved directly by me before escalation. At the back of the packet is a single page from the Department of Defense Review Board, not the operational details, just one sentence highlighted. Analyst Emily Carter's intervention prevented material loss exceeding 8 figures and preserved operational command integrity. The judge reads it twice. Behind me, someone inhales sharply. Brighton Falls understands numbers when they are large enough. My father's shoulders drop slightly. He looks smaller, not diminished, just recalibrated. The judge sets the folder down. "Mr. Carter," she says evenly, "this court sees no evidence that Mrs. Carter is incapable of managing the inherited property. On the contrary, the record suggests she has done so quietly and effectively for years." Quietly. That word lands differently now. Your petition for sole control is denied. There is no dramatic reaction, no gasps, just the sound of finality. The Carter property will remain under Ms. Carter's authority. Should either party seek cooperative management in the future, that can be pursued privately. She lifts her pen. This matter is concluded. The gavel falls once, clean, contained. People begin to stand. Conversations start in low, uncertain tones. I gather my papers slowly. Across the aisle, my father remains seated. His lawyer speaks to him, but he does not respond immediately. For a long moment, he watches the bench where the judge sat. Then he turns toward me. There is no anger now, only something heavier. "I didn't know," he says. His voice is lower than I have ever heard it. I nod once. "I didn't ask you to know." He studies my face as if searching for accusation. He will not find it. He will also not find apology. "I thought," he begins, then stops. He looks down at his hands. "I thought you left." "I did," I say. The distinction does not require elaboration. He breathes in slowly. "I mistook your silence," he says carefully, "for weakness." It is the closest he will come to admission. I do not soften it for him. "Silence," I reply, "is discipline." We stand in the middle of the aisle while the town filters around us. No one interrupts. Brighton Falls is learning something it did not expect. My father glances toward the doors, then back at me. "What happens now?" he asks. "Nothing dramatic," I say. "The property remains in my name. The taxes will continue to be paid. The land will not be sold without my signature. Life will proceed. He nods slowly. For the first time in years, he looks uncertain of his position in relation to me. Not threatened, just aware. A new balance. We walk out of the courthouse side by side, but not touching. Outside, the air is sharp and clean. Reporters from the local paper pretend to rearrange their cameras. No one approaches. My father stops at the steps. "I was trying to protect what I built," he says quietly. I look at the street beyond him. "And I was protecting it," I reply. The difference settles between us. He nods once more. There is no embrace, no dramatic reconciliation, only recognition. Sometimes the person in the basement carries more weight than the one at the podium. I turn toward my car. The town will talk for a while. Then it will move on. Systems always do. Before I continue, tell me, when have you seen silence mistaken for weakness? If this story resonated with you, you're welcome to stay for the next one. Brighton Falls does not forget quickly, but it pretends to. 3 days after the ruling, I walk the north boundary of the Carter land alone. Frost still clings to the low grass. The irrigation ditch runs narrow and steady. The fence line holds. Control is not loud, it is maintenance. My father's truck is parked near the barn when I return to the main road. He stands beside it, hands in his jacket pockets, watching me approach. He does not wave. I stop a few feet away. "You're early," he says. "I always am." He nods once. There is no audience here, no judge, no benches full of neighbors measuring posture and tone, only open land and cold air. "I reviewed the trust documents," he says after a moment. "You structured them to prevent sale without your authorization." "Yes." "You don't trust me." It is not an accusation. It is an observation. "I trust systems," I reply. He exhales slowly. Years ago, in the basement server room, I learned that trust without verification is vulnerability. During Iron Vortex, it was not betrayal that nearly collapsed the command structure. It was unchecked authority. Colonel Rhett Rivers had believed his position insulated him. Marcus Hale believed access meant ownership. They were wrong. The hanger learned that in silence. My father shifts his weight. "I didn't know you were paying the taxes," he says again, as if repetition might change the memory. "You didn't ask." He studies the barn roof. "I thought you cut us off." "I removed myself," I say. "That's different." The wind moves between us. He rubs his hands together once, a small, nervous gesture I remember from childhood when numbers did not align on his work ledgers. "I was afraid," he says finally. I wait. That if you controlled the land, you wouldn't need us, that you'd sell it, leave. I look at the fields. "I've been gone for years," I say quietly, "and I never sold it." He absorbs that. In the courtroom, ego dissolved under documentation. Out here, it dissolves under reality. "You were never unstable," he says. It is not praise, it is correction. "I was disciplined," I answer. A long pause settles. In the weeks after Iron Vortex, whispers traveled faster than facts. In the hangar, people recalibrated their assumptions. Basement Evie, unnoticed analyst. Until they saw the cascade, I prevented. Until they understood that control is not command presence, it is comprehension. My father clears his throat. "I'd like to stay involved," he says carefully, "in maintenance, in operations. The request is measured, not a demand." "You can," I reply, "with structure." He nods. "Shared reports," I continue, "quarterly reviews, transparent accounting." His mouth tightens slightly at the word accounting. Then he nods again. "All right." No handshake, no ceremony, just terms. The town shifts around us in quiet ways. The local paper prints a short column about the case. It emphasizes service commendation. It avoids the word lawsuit. At the feed store, conversations pause when I enter, then resume differently. Not louder, more cautious. My father notices it too. One afternoon at the hardware counter, an older neighbor says to him, "Didn't realize Emily handled all that federal mess." My father answers without humor, "She handled it." He does not elaborate. That is new. Weeks pass. The property ledger balances. Equipment repairs are scheduled. A new irrigation pump is ordered with documented bids. My father sends me scanned receipts without being asked. Control has shifted, but not broken. One evening, I return to the old house. Inside, the kitchen table remains in the same place it has for decades. Sunlight cuts across its surface at the same angle. My father sits across from me. "I misread you," he says. "Yes. I thought your silence meant you didn't care. It meant I was working." He nods slowly. There are no dramatic apologies, no declarations, just understanding. "I don't like not being in charge," he admits. "I know. But I don't want to lose this place." "You won't," I say. "The land remains. The system remains. Only the hierarchy has adjusted." Later that night, I walk through the house alone. My old bedroom is unchanged except for dust and a replaced window frame. The hallway light hums faintly. In the basement, beneath the stairs, there is a small storage room. It smells of soil and paint thinner. I stand there for a moment. Basement Evie, the unnoticed one. Control does not require a spotlight. It requires patience. The next county meeting is quiet. I attend. I sit in the second row. When zoning questions arise about agricultural easements, I speak once. Clear. Precise. No one interrupts. Afterward, my father approaches me outside the municipal building. "You could have destroyed me in that courtroom," he says. "I didn't need to." He studies me carefully. "You let the system do it." "Yes." He nods, almost to himself. "That's heavier." It is. We do not return to what we were. We do not become something sentimental. We become aligned. He stops trying to lead by volume. I stop correcting him in public. The land remains under my authority. He manages daily tasks with documented oversight. Brighton Falls adjusts to the new structure. There are no further petitions, no more whispers about instability, only occasional glances when I walk through town, measuring, reassessing. One evening, as the sun drops behind the fields, my father stands beside me at the fence line. "I was wrong," he says simply. The statement is small, but it is precise. "I know," I reply, "and that is enough." Sometimes the one in the basement holds the blueprint. Sometimes silence is not surrender, but preparation. Have you ever watched someone mistake restraint for weakness? If this story stayed with you, you're welcome to stay for the next one. Winter comes early to Brighton Falls. The fields turn rigid under frost. The air sharpens. Sound carries farther when the ground is hard. Control, I've learned, feels different in winter. It is less about expansion, more about endurance. 3 months after the ruling, I receive a letter from the county assessor's office, a routine audit notification, agricultural exemption verification, nothing unusual except the date on the request. It predates the court case by 2 weeks. I read it twice. Someone had inquired about reassessment before my father filed the petition. I drive to the assessor's office the next morning. The building smells like old carpet and toner. Fluorescent lights hum overhead. The clerk recognizes my name now. That recognition is recent. "I'm reviewing this audit trigger," I say, placing the letter on the counter. She types, frowns slightly. "There was a request for valuation reassessment," she says, "submitted under the Carter Property Trust." "By whom?" She hesitates. "Mr. John Carter." The date aligns. 2 weeks before he filed for sole control. I nod once. "And the purpose?" "Change of operational status," she replies. "Possible partial liquidation." Liquidation. So that was the urgency. Not reputation alone, not stability, liquidity. I thank her and leave without further comment. The wind is strong when I step outside. It presses against my coat, steady and insistent. I do not confront him immediately. Impulse is expensive. Instead, I return home and review the trust structure I finalized years ago after Iron Vortex. Layered authorizations, dual signature requirements for sale, automatic alerts for reassessment filings. The alert had triggered. I had assumed it was procedural. It was not. That evening, I drive to the property. My father is in the barn, inspecting a tractor axle. He looks up when I enter. "You're late," he says. I stop by the assessor's office. His hands pause. He wipes them on a cloth slowly. "They mentioned your reassessment request." He does not deny it. "I was exploring options," he says. "For liquidation?" A brief silence. "If it became necessary." "Necessary for what?" He looks at the concrete floor. "Cash flow." I wait. The discipline of waiting unsettles people more than anger ever could. "There are debts," he says finally. "Personal ones. Business extensions that didn't resolve." "How much?" He hesitates. I do not fill the silence. "More than I planned." I nod once. "Why not tell me?" His jaw tightens. "Because it's not your responsibility." "It became my responsibility the moment you tried to leverage the land." He absorbs that. Years ago, in the basement, I watched senior officers protect their pride until it nearly collapsed operations. This feels similar. "You were going to sell acreage without authority," I say calmly. "I was going to petition," he corrects weakly. "You already did." He exhales sharply. "I didn't think you'd notice." I always notice. That lands. The barn is quiet except for distant wind moving through loose metal panels. "I thought if the land shifted fully to me," he says slowly, "I could manage it cleanly, quietly." "You mean without oversight?" He does not respond. Control without transparency is risk. I learned that underground. "You have two choices," I say. "Full disclosure and structured resolution, or I initiate external audit review on all Carter holdings." He looks up quickly. "You'd report me?" "I would protect the asset." "Not him, not myself. The asset, the land." He studies my face, searching for threat. There is none, only policy. After a long moment, he nods. "All right." We sit at the old kitchen table that night. For the first time in my life, my father opens his personal ledgers in front of me. Credit extensions tied to speculative equipment investments, short-term loans rolled into longer ones, a private guarantee he signed for a subcontractor who defaulted. The numbers are not catastrophic, but unmanaged, they would metastasize. "You were afraid," I say quietly. "Yes." "Of losing control?" He nods once. "And of you knowing." "I already knew," I reply. "Not specifics, patterns." He leans back in his chair. "When did you start seeing like this?" he asks. "In the basement," I answer. He almost smiles at that. "Basement Evie," he says. I look at him. He must have heard the nickname somewhere. "Yes. You never told us what you did. You never asked what mattered." That sits between us. We spend 3 hours restructuring his debt schedule. I call a contact from my service days who now works in federal contracting compliance. Quiet advice, clean refinancing path, no shortcuts, no hidden petitions. When we finish, my father closes the ledger. "You could have destroyed me," he says again. "I could have," I agree. "Why didn't you?" "Because systems are meant to stabilize, not humiliate." He nods slowly. Outside, frost begins to form again across the fields. Winter deepens. The reassessment request is formally withdrawn the next morning. I receive confirmation in writing. From that point forward, all county filings list dual authorization. My father no longer submits unilateral documents. Control has become shared structure, not dominance, not ego, structure. Brighton Falls continues its quiet observation. At church one Sunday, a man who once whispered about my federal trouble shakes my hand and says, "Didn't realize you were that kind of analyst." "I am," I reply. No elaboration. My father stands beside me and does not correct the narrative. That too is new. The land remains intact. The debts are managed. The hierarchy has changed permanently. One evening, as we close the barn for the night, my father pauses. "You weren't trying to take anything from me," he says. "No. I was trying to protect what I thought was mine. And I was protecting what is." He considers that carefully. Control is not ownership. It is stewardship. In the distance, the town lights flicker on. Brighton Falls settles into itself. No more petitions. No more quiet filings. Just maintenance. I drive home alone under a sky that feels wider than it used to. Silence follows me, but it no longer feels misread. It feels earned. Have you ever watched someone mistake control for strength? If this story has stayed with you, you're welcome to stay for the next one.